Hey there, kids. Thanks for watching. The 2020 fantasy football season is in the books, and we are here to hand out the hardware. Let's look back on the season and give awards for the best and the worst players, the guys who gave great value, the guys who crushed our souls. I bet you've got some thoughts, and so do we. Hey there, I'm Chris. I cleaned up a little bit for the awards show. I was going to wear like a tuxedo jacket and a bow tie, and then I realized I don't have a tuxedo jacket or a bow tie, and then I was just going to wear a suit with a regular necktie. And then I realized I don't have a regular necktie in Los Angeles. So here it is. This is basically the best I can do. Welcome to this awards show. We're going to do a lot of various thoughts about what happened in this past season. Mostly, though, we care what you think. So when we go through these categories, make sure you post. Tell us down in the comments whether you think our awards are misplaced, whether you would give it to somebody else, and all that good stuff. We're going to start out. Who should be the fantasy football MVP for 2020? Should it be Derrick Henry? He had a great year, gonna win another rushing title. With a big Week 17, he has a chance to wind up with the most running back fantasy points. How about Dalvin Cook? What a season. He also might wind up with the most running back fantasy points. He's not going to play in Week 17, and in his case, it could be standard and in PPR if nobody catches him. He also has the best chance, maybe, in leading the league in scrimmage yards. Maybe you're in your conception of value, we should consider someone like James Robinson, undrafted in most leagues, still going to post a top 6 season at the scarcest position, even missing the last 3 weeks of the season, though that injury probably does disqualify him from total landing on MVP. I could make a strong case for Devontae Adams. He will either tie or lead the league in receiving touchdowns and was an absolute monster as one of the most week-to-week consistent players around. But then you'd also have to think Tyreek Hill, who also won't play Week 17, but will end the year with 17 scrimmage touchdowns. A little disappointing for Tyreek when it came to the Week 16 Fantasy Championship. Still an amazing season. And let's not forget Stephon Diggs. Holy moly. Maybe he was a better candidate than the two highest scoring wideouts because he wasn't a consensus first-round pick, and all Stephon Diggity did was lead the NFL in catches and receiving yards. Travis Kelce should get some love, I suppose. I don't know. It's tough for a tight end to be MVP for me because there just isn't scarcity, but the man almost won the yardage title among all pass catchers. And honestly, you could say Aaron Rodgers, picked outside the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks, left for dead by so much of the fantasy world. Ho-hum. So far, 44 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions, and maybe it's appropriate in this unsteady and frustrating year that we don't have a clear fantasy MVP. But my vote goes to Alvin Kamara. He was already a leading contender heading into Week 16. Even at that point, he was the number 1 running back in PPR scoring, number 3 in standard, with 15 scrimmage touchdowns, even suffering through a month of Taysom Hill and making us all a little crazy there. And of course, all that was before he scored 6 touchdowns on Christmas Day in your fantasy finals. He didn't make it impossible to lose your championship, but he certainly produced the best single day ever in a fantasy football title game. And for me, when it's really close among the possible MVP candidates, I'm going to default to the guy who just went bananas when it mattered the most. A lot of other guys we just mentioned weren't awesome in Week 16. Alvin Kamara absolutely was. Now, I don't think Kamara is the unquestioned MVP. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments, but I thought about it a lot, and Kamara is who I came up with for Fantasy MVP of 2020. Okay, we'll get back to the rest of the awards in just a second. Let's thank the sponsor. And if you have been sitting on your sofa and realizing it's old and torn up and not comfortable and sort of lumpy, and you've been thinking we need a new sofa in our house, I'm just going to tell you, I hope at least you will add Burrow to your research list. Like, look into them, because I really think you'll like what you find. They are great. The deal with Burrow is they've come up with a genius way for you to get a sofa every bit as nice as the one you'd get in like a West Elm or a Pottery Barn. Serious luxury furniture. I have a Burrow sofa. I watch football on it every week. But you can get it delivered direct to you in easy to assemble pieces and assemble it yourself in 10 minutes with no tools necessary, disassembles and reassembles easily if you have to move. And the point is, you can do all this because it just makes it cost a lot less. It is a great innovation. It lets you afford true luxury furniture at less than a luxury price. Burrow has other furniture like coffee tables and bookshelves and more. And we can get you $75 off when you check them out at burrow.com/HarrisTube. Seriously, when you're ready to research a new sofa, remember to add Burrow to your research as well, because you won't believe how great the deal is. Free fast shipping, burrow.com/HarrisTube. Okay, we've handed out the award for MVP. How about LVP? Who was the least valuable fantasy option here in 2020? And I'm going to leave out the injury players. It's hard to get mad at Christian McCaffrey for getting hurt so early in the season. Hard to be mad at Saquon Barkley for getting hurt even earlier than C-Mac. Michael Thomas was brutal, the consensus number one wideout, and he also got injured. You're allowed to be mad at Joe Mixon's coaches for not giving us great info about his injury. Hard to be mad at him. I don't know, Julio Jones, kind of same thing. I mean, he was awesome when he was out there. Real disappointing how little he was out there. But I'm not putting any injury guys on the LVP list. Was Clyde Edwards-Helaire an injury guy? I mean, he was by the time we got to December, but long before then, this first rounder in most leagues was wildly inconsistent. He had a few good games, but the whole appeal was supposed to be that he was on an offense that would make him a star, and it flat out did not. Miles Sanders, he mostly went early in the second round, but there were plenty of touts calling him a no-brainer in the late first. And to be fair, I mean, Sanders' situation crumbled around him. A lot of his struggles were not his fault, but he still returned nothing like the optimistic assessment of his range of outcomes. Chris Godwin missed a couple games with injury, but as a no-brainer second rounder, not good stuff. I mean, he went before Mike Evans did, and there was clearly an emphasis on Mike Evans as the season went along. Godwin's fantasy owners did not have a great time with him. Juju Smith-Schuster was real bad for fantasy, and we had people touting him as a top 10 option at wide receiver. It became pretty clear early on he was the third best wideout on his own team. And Todd Gurley, drafted to be a pretty safe, volume-based RB2, mostly in the third round, and it started out fine. He was doing pretty much what you drafted him to do until it mattered most. After Atlanta's Week 10 bye, the Falcons came back and just barely used him, which stung for sure. But this one I don't think is close. Those other finalists don't approach Zeke Elliott's maddening and frustrating 2020, the number 2 or number 3 pick in pretty much all drafts on the planet. And Zeke simply delivered a gross and pedestrian season. Now, Elliott, too, had situational problems. His quarterback got hurt. Offensive line got hurt. Wasn't good. But the whole appeal of tough, physical, crushing Zeke Elliott is supposed to be he's such a brawler that he can overcome a little lapse in situation, and he absolutely did not. And nothing typifies this more than the fact that Zeke had 11 carries from the 1-yard line and scored 4 times. He had 15 carries inside the 3 and scored 4 times. Frustrating season. Zeke will just be 26 next year. Tony Pollard is in Dallas. Suddenly, his future is not so obvious. Okay, I've got some more awards to go through here. I'll go through them a little quicker than I did with MVP and LVP. I'm going to start out, how about the best out-of-nowhere fantasy season for 2020? You know, we gave James Robinson a little nod earlier in the MVP conversation, but you know, if you drafted in August, Robinson almost certainly did not go in your draft. Remember, the Jags did not release Leonard Fournette until the last day of August. So yeah, I had some leagues that drafted in September, and I wound up with Robinson on some teams as a total flyer, but nobody knew we were in for a 1,000-yard, double-digit touchdown season. Back in November on the channel, we did some film work on Robinson, and I concluded I don't think he's a truly special player, maybe kind of like a somewhat slower Chris Carson. And this season was probably the result of nothing else working very well and not having a great creative play-calling mind in Jacksonville. Plus, it's a bummer he got hurt in Week 14, but it was still a great ride for James Robinson. How about the Too Little Too Late award, David Johnson, part of that blockbuster trade that sent the great DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona? Johnson just didn't look like he had any juice as a runner for most of the season. Week 1, he looked pretty good, but it faded quickly after that. He never rushed for 100 yards in a game in the first 15 weeks, but he kept getting double-digit touches every week, so you looked at the workload and you hung in for as long as humanly possible. Then he went on IR with a concussion, and you might have given up then. Then he came back and wound up on the COVID list. Then he missed a game with an injured neck. And so when you got to your fantasy finals, I mean, maybe you didn't have a choice. I hope you started him. Johnson went crazy in the third quarter against Cincinnati. It was basically one quarter. He'd been hot garbage in the first half of that game, too, just like he'd been hot garbage all year. I will call that too little, too late. Next up, how about a good performer for 2020 who I don't believe in for 2021? If you watched our 2021 busts video, which we will link to right here, you're not going to be surprised to hear that David Montgomery does not excite me for 2021. As of our recording this, before Week 17, Montgomery sits at RB6, which is the result of a broken passing game for Chicago and a hilariously easy schedule down the stretch. Let's remind ourselves that after Week 11, Robinson was the RB27 in standard, one spot behind Rex Burkhead. There are going to be people who look at the total numbers. There are going to be people who remember this great run at the end of the season. And I'm not trying to say Montgomery's hopeless, but this confluence of usage and schedule will probably never happen for him ever again. David Montgomery, not on it for 2021. Okay, how about a bad performer in 2021 that I do still believe in? And I'm going to say Tyler Lockett. And maybe you're thinking, wait, Tyler Lockett wasn't a bad performer. He's wide receiver 14 in standard leagues going into Week 17. And he was drafted wide receiver 18. He basically delivered. But that is only true for people who love cumulative stats, because nearly half of Lockett's fantasy points came in 2 games. He had 10 sub-7 fantasy point games. It was a truly terrible ride. And listen, DK Metcalf is a revelation. He's a top 5 receiver next year, and Lockett necessarily takes a backseat to him. But it won't be this much. It won't be this crazy. Lockett himself is fast, and he's a good player. And as defenses adjust to Metcalf and scheme to get him, there should be more work for Lockett. We all know it's possible for a good quarterback to produce more than one good fantasy wideout. I think Lockett goes back to being more consistent in 2021. The Outside the Top 100 League Dominator Award that I just made up. I think on this channel, at this point, you're pretty familiar with my admiration for Justin Jefferson. I think he's going to be a value pick next season, frankly, even though he might go top 15 among receivers. As of our recording this, he sits at wide receiver 8, just ahead of DeAndre Hopkins. Jefferson was legit pretty much right from the start, and frankly, probably had some bad touchdown luck, if only because Adam Thielen is such a gifted end zone guy. It isn't just numbers when it comes to Jefferson. It's the routes and the hands and the body control. He's going to be a superstar, and on average, he went in the 10th or 11th round back in August. And to wrap it up, how about the biggest roller coaster season? I'll give it to Cam Newton. He started incredibly well. His Week 2 performance against the Seahawks was legit one of the best QB games I saw on film all year, but something happened. He got COVID, maybe his shoulder is screwed up again, and this dude ricocheted back and forth. 18 points, minus 0.2 points, 24 points, 4 points, 23 points. And of course, it was mostly based on whether or not he got you rushing yards and, more importantly, rushing touchdowns that week. By the end of the season, as a thrower, Newton just could not be trusted to wind up and hit a guy 15 yards away. Feels like maybe Cam Newton's time as an NFL starting QB is up. And for fantasy, it was a crazy and ultimately doomed ride. And that's it. I mean, I looked snazzy, and it turned out to be kind of a snazzy show, I think. I hope you enjoyed these awards. Most importantly, go down in the comments and tell us who your MVP and LVP and all these other awards are. Give your own awards. I just want to hear what you have to say down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, support the sponsors. That's how this channel happens. If you think you might wind up being in the market for a couch, Burrow's been a great sponsor of this channel in 2020, so I'd love it if you just add them to your research and check out, because I love my Burrow sofa. I really do. It's right over there. You can't see it. You saw it earlier. Fantastic. So check out burrow.com. Again, thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Please, please, please smash that like button. Write a comment. Tell us who else you'd like to see us review film on. And of course, best of all, please subscribe to our channel and then click that little bell above the subscribe button and you'll be notified whenever we post a new video.